First bite of the apple goes
Me.
to Matt.
That's me. So this is Smog with the album Knock Knock. And let's see, let me run some numbers here. Smog, Knock Knock by Smog comes in number 573 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 51 in 1999, number 3,406 of all time. It is Smog's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Smog is ranked number 939 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. And so this is one of those artists that has a band name, but it's basically a guy, right? Mm-hmm. It's not really a band; it's more of just the name of the group of the artist known as Bill Callahan. And this is Smog's seventh studio album that was released on January 12th, 1999. So that didn't really chart anywhere. Neither Smog. He actually, Bill Callahan, did a number of albums under the name Smog, and then switched over to Bill Callahan. So he's got both, albums under both names. Mm-hmm. And nothing charted on either incarnation. So Callahan himself was born on June 3rd, 1966 in Maryland. He began his career as an experimental artist. So which I'm sure is no surprise after hearing this record. But back in the day when he first started, he was using what they called substandard equipment and instruments that were played. He played on untuned guitars, a lot of dissonant sounds early on, and most of his music was instrumental. So it wasn't for a couple albums before he started actually singing on records. He did eventually sign with a label called Drag Records, and essentially all of his albums since then had been put out by Drag Records.
Drag City, right? Drag City?
It said Drag Records.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if Drag City might be a different one. I'm pretty sure it said Drag Records. And as time went on, after he signed there, the sound of his albums became more refined. So not as lo-fi, I think, as the first couple that he did. And so really this bio is going to be as sparse as this album is at times because there's not a whole lot on them. But the first single, Held, is the first single from Knock Knock. Josh, do you recall, did that song Held sound familiar to you at all?
Yeah, I think Spoon's covered it.
There you go. You go. You win. Yeah, Spoon. Spoon did cover this during live performances, and it also later appeared on their 2022 album Lucifer on the Sofa. And so there, you might have heard that song before. And funnily enough, the production, usually Callahan produced most of Smog's records, but the record before this was produced with him and another producer, and then this album was totally produced by that producer. And probably no shock to either of you, but that producer was Jim O'Rourke. Mm-hmm. So he spent some time producing some Smog records. We just covered him a couple weeks ago. So this album comes out in 2000, and then he does several other ones. In 2007, he released his first album under his own name, saying later, quote, "I realized that smog is a really ugly word. I realized I'd been going so many years without even thinking about it. I realized I didn't want to be associated with this thing that doesn't even exist because a name is a pretty strong thing, right?" So he then goes on to be Bill Callahan. He did release a live album on Third Man Records, which is Jack White's label in Tennessee. That was released in 2018 called Bill Callahan Live at Third Man Records. He did consider retiring in 2015 after the birth of his first son, but he decided not to do that. So he's still around. All told, he has 11 studio albums under the name Smog and 9 under Bill Callahan. As I said, there's not a whole lot here of bio, so we can probably just spend more time talking about the record itself. And let's see. Let's start with John. What's your take on Smog's Knock Knock?
Well, first of all, can we talk about how hilarious this cover of the album is?
That's the first thing I wrote down.
Okay.
Yes.
It looks like something that
Describe
Andy
the cover,
Samberg or
John.
The Lonely Island would have
Right.
pulled, for something.
Yeah.
It is a very late 90s computer graphic tone.
Little Photoshop
the font,
action? Yeah.
The font is bizarre because you would normally stack the words smog and knock knock in a different way. You'd probably center the smog and the knock knock, but instead they run across the very top of the album with a bizarre bizarre and not aesthetically pleasing space in between them. Then there is a background of a gigantic lightning tree, is the best way to describe it, in the background, and then jammed to the very front as if it was a clip art just dumped on the front of a stock background, as was the title and the name of the band, is what looks to be like a lynx. Like, it's not a house cat, but it's not large enough to be one of the big
like
cats.
a bobcat or something.
A bobcat lynx type figure. I don't know which one. Staring into like the diagonal of the album cover, and with a vaguely ominous like mouth open, could be defending themselves or could be on the prowl. I'm not sure. The eyes are gigantic, and there you go. That's what it is. It's just, I cannot stress the 1998 of it all and the early internet meme value of the type of art that's here. So I have to start with that. Josh, I see that you saw that as well.
Yes, that's literally the first thing I wrote down when I started listening to this album.
It was remarkable.
I also think it's funny that because I had to listen to this on YouTube at work, and I found it funny. Somebody put a comment: "No cat singing in the lightning song here, as far as I'm aware. I am severely disappointed, and I leave a bad review."
Well, like I said, it's very early internet. Let's put it that way. So moving back onto the album itself, I love the fact that every decade we cover about 3 to 4 albums like this, where they are quirky, off the beaten path singer-songwriters who
really
will hit
DIY too.
Yeah, like stripped down at times, but also bizarrely complex when you listen to them the second or third time. Like the first, it's sort of the same journey for me in terms of these types of albums. The first time I'm like, well, this is certainly interesting. Let me give this a full listen. The second time is, wow, the variety of this album is quite a bit. It's now that I've kind of got what the lane it's in, it's processing the variety, and you sort into songs I really am connecting with now, and songs that it's not that I don't like, but they don't connect immediately. And then the third and final listen is normally, wow, this is a lot more complex, and there's a lot more going on here than I processed. It's not universal, the take, but that seems to be what these types of albums inspire. So a couple weeks ago, we did Eureka by Jim O'Rourke, which I would definitely put in that category. Big Science by Laurie Anderson would be another album along those lines. There's just quite a few, and I could list some others. I'm not going to run down every album like it though, but I'm glad albums like this exist, because I do feel like there have to be people on the fringes of what pop music is, or radio friendly music, or even accessible music, to sort of push and explore areas that later people are able to grab and either continue with in the area of the abstract or the bizarre or the left field, and others can take bits of it and make it mainstream and credit out, right? Listening to this album is something that influences them. Daniel Johnston, right, was another person that I would put in this category.
Sparkle Horse is another one I thought of.
Sparkle Horse, yes, exactly. Yep. So, and we can keep going, but what I liked about this is this album kept me on my toes, both in length, in terms of the templates of the songs. I actually think it's a really good lyrical record too. It has a little bit of the same lane of what an Elliott Smith or a Nick Drake explores in their lyrics, but it doesn't sound depressive, if that makes sense. It's exploring solitude and loneliness and things like that, but and the dissolution of relationships and stuff. Dissolution, excuse me. But whereas those albums, there's that desperation that's in them, almost so sparse for Nick Drake, certainly across all of his work, and early Elliott Smith for sure. This one's not like that. This is more, let me put down how I'm feeling, but where it is like a cat in a field with lightning over it does feel like the type of album that you'd be driving in the desert listening to as you're looking up at the dark and contemplating things. It's a real night album for me in terms of when it's at its best. The other name I wrote down was Scott Walker.
Yeah. Was
who I feel this owes a great debt to. Now, we've covered Scott Walker twice. Tilt in the 90s, I wouldn't say is as much like this, but certainly Scott 4 from the 60s is in the same lane. It's atmospheric. It's very interesting musically. I'm going to kind of defer to Matt. Does a really good job often of breaking down like exactly what's in it musically, so I'll leave that space for him. But I like this one, and it got more interesting and enjoyable as I continued to listen to it. While it's not an album I'm going to pick up and listen to immediately afterwards or even think about all the times, it is an album that there are specific spaces, a more existential philosophical moment, the night, a long drive, where I really feel I really connected with this album 2 of the 3 times I listened to it. It had some emotional resonance for me. So thumbs up for me. I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise for me too. I'm right with you, John, in terms of thinking of those other artists when I listen to this. There's a definite through line between the 60s and to the late 90s here with and through the show, obviously, that all these artists that we've explored. There's a hypnotic quality to this album I found in a lot of ways. The songs are not super long, but they seem to have kind of an underlying repetition to them that works really well, either through like a beat or kind of like a guitar part that kind of returns over and over. So like there's these motifs that keep like popping up, I feel like, throughout the album. This album also, you said surprising, John. I would agree, because it takes left turns and like starts out often, I think it's going to be one type of song, and then it like shifts into another type of song, and not like unpleasantly. It's just kind of like you said, it keeps you on your toes. Held as an example of this.
Cold-Blooded Old Times is another one. It gets this like honky-tonk keyboard, like piano in the middle of it. I wrote down for that one, Josh, I feel like this is the version of the type of alt country that Matt loves that's for weirdos like me. It felt like an alt country song, but done by someone coming from, it's like Bizarro World Wilco, I feel like, is Cold-Blooded Old Times. Yeah.
Yeah, or they have like, or he plays like some sort of like blues riff, and then it like totally like goes away from that. So like you think it's one thing and then it shifts into something else. And that could be annoying or distracting, but for this album it worked. We haven't mentioned that he incorporates kids singing into a couple of these songs as like backing like choral singers. That's an interesting choice, and it works for the songs No Dancing and Hit the Ground Running. The kids are in both of those. He's also the band is very, band/solo artist is good at having like sparse arrangements, but using or adding one instrument like effectively. So there'll be like an acoustic guitar, but then there's some electric guitar, or there'll be like guitar, but then they add a piano, and or like in No Dancing, you've got the electric guitar plus the kids singing plus like strings, and it kind of like, it really like fills it out and kind of adds this unexpected depth to the songs. The only other thing, I appreciated the running time at like 40 something minutes. The other thing that we haven't mentioned that I wrote down is there's a lot of like Lou Reed of like lyrics. So that's definitely
Hit the Ground Running sounds like a Velvet Underground song.
So he's definitely channeling that, which I appreciate as well. And I don't know, this was just a pleasant surprise. And for, again, like almost 5 shows left, not knowing SMOG at all, not even recognizing the name, and then it coming out of nowhere and just like giving us a good aural listening experience this week.
I also want to say one last thing before Matt comes in. I feel 9 and 10, the end of the album, I Could Drive Forever and Left Only with Love, are really good ends, and also great lyrically. Left Only with Love is a really great a breakup song. And it takes an interesting twist on it. So just throw some love
it
there.
It is Drag City, Matt. I looked it up and fact checked that
Is it?
label.
Okay.
Yeah, Bonnie Prince Billy's on
Oh,
that
it does say Drag
label.
City. You're right, Josh. I'm sorry.
Joanna Newsom also, historically.
Okay. My bad. Thank you for clearing that stack. So yeah, this was I'm kind of right there with you guys. I agree with all of those artists that you said. I mean, the first song that came on, "Let's Move to the Country," I'm like, this is Nick Drake, right?
Yeah.
And it also reminded me, who was the artist? I don't know if it was this decade, but didn't we cover somebody that was basically like a cellist that did like cello music or whatever from like the, maybe it was in the 80s or whatever.
Yeah, no, it was in the mid 80s. It was the and why am I it was the guy who unfortunately died young of a brain tumor. Oh gosh. Keep going, Matt, and I'll bring it up when I
the
get there.
experimental artist guy or somebody else.
Yeah, it was quasi experimental, but he used it was a lot of cello.
It's not Arthur Russell, is it? Is that who you're thinking of?
That sounds it might have been Arthur Russell. Might have been.
We'll have to.
I should have cleaned the stock before, but it just came to me. So, but certainly Nick Drake. And also kind of all the other artists. Another band that we recently covered that's kind of similar that I was kind of taken aback a little bit in terms of the tone of the record was that Eels album that we did.
Yeah.
I thought that there were some similarities there, with just like kind of grasping of what they're doing, which is not terribly indicative of the times, right? It's not like this. It's not like you put any of these records on, you go, oh, this is a '90s record. You know what I mean? It's kind of like its own. Version.
I wrote that
whatever.
too, Matt. This doesn't feel like 1999.
Right.
It doesn't feel like anything.
It doesn't feel like any year. Yes.
It's its own thing.
Yeah.
So I very much appreciated kind of like, especially at the beginning, it seemed like there was like a slower, like acoustic, drawn out song followed by like something. Let's plug in the guitars a little bit and bump up the energy a little bit. Really liked Held. I didn't know that about Spoon, but as soon as I read that, I was like, oh yeah, this totally sounds like a Spoon song, you know. I just thought that was that makes sense that that's the single. It's got a great groove, like immediately, like it's kind of an outlier on this record, I would say, because it's something because not many of the songs like pick you up right away, and you hold on to that. A lot of this is an album that would always overall is a grower, but Held is not that, you know. So this also, like, I know the genres are kind of like, you know, it's alt rock. It's, you know, some of his stuff is considered alt country, lo-fi for sure in some areas. This slowcore was something that came up for me, you know, like there's some aspects of this that are very much like Red House Painters, and the vocalist Mark Kozelek from that sounds like, you know, he's got his vocals there. He's got an interesting baritone, like timbre to his voice. At times it does sound a little like Nick Drake. At times it sounds a little like Eddie Vedder, and Mark Kozelek as well. So I thought that was kind of, you know, I found his voice intriguing, and it's just like it's kind of like generally speaking, it's a stripped down album. This is a guy that is, you know, clearly doing his own thing, and just, it's where I wish I was a little bit more into lyrics, because I'm sure I would have seen more into this, but I also think that, you know, musically there's a lot to grasp onto here, and I think it does get better the more you listen to it. It is probably a night album. I didn't listen to this. Of the 3 times I listened to it, I did not listen to it at all, just strictly at night. But I could see it growing in stature if you're doing that, because it definitely seems like that is kind of the best time of day to listen to this. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to read about him and the other albums that he has. Like, it sounds like the early stuff is very much like atonal, and, you know, it's totally experimental. But this, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of rooted in, you know, some sort of musical structure. I wouldn't say it's totally, you know, out of left field or doing something terribly experimental. Yeah. I think at times there might be some of these acoustic songs, you know, there's not really like a ton of melody to them. But I think that's okay, because I think the production is still pretty good, and I think the vibe that this album kind of, you know, brings across, you know, is interesting. And it's not all sad. It's definitely got some sadness to it for sure, but then there's some other parts that kind of it picks up a little bit. So yeah, it's a thumbs up for me. I agree. I don't know if this is something that I would be able to go to at any time, but it's certainly, add it to another feather in the cap, or, you know, knowledge that we have on artists that are out there that have been putting out a lot of music, you know, and that have been, you know, in some way, shape, or form influential on other artists and things like that. So yeah, it's a thumbs up for me.
Can I add another album I just remembered of that can be similar? Album similar to The Nightfly by Donald Fagen. I think shares a lot in common with this one too, if you
That was
remember
a long time
that.
ago.
That was a great night album, right? It had sort of the idea of being
Yeah,
a concept album about the radio, if you remember, and I felt a little bit like how this album felt. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, unlike Nick Drake and some of those artists, this is not like a depressing, like sad type of album. It's pretty, you know, I wouldn't say uplifting, but it's light.
not jaunty,
It feels-
but yeah.
I mean, it
feels
has
light.
its moments, right?
Yeah.
There's some songs that are a little bit more on that side, but then there's other ones that kind of come through. So yeah. And I didn't go through this before, but yeah, influences some of these artists that we've already talked about. Daniel Johnston influenced this. Leonard Cohen, Nick Drake, Velvet Underground, Joy Division, Lou Reed, Townes Van Zandt was on there. That's another good touch
A lot
point.
of early CTS artists.
Yeah, right.
The earliest.
Yeah. And artists that he influenced include Cat Powers on here on this list.
I see that.
Granddaddy, who we haven't covered yet, and then there's a ton of artists that are like similar to, right? Elliott Smith, Iron and Wine, Liz Phair, Pulp. I don't know about Pulp.
I wrote down this has a Liz Phair quality to it, but then I
Yeah.
ripped it up as it went on because I saw others that were more easy. But there is a little bit of "You're Gonna Read My Diary" It's where it is in the lyricism. The songs are very similar to Exile and Guyville type
some
songs.
of the, I'd say the production too, the sparse production is kind of similar too. Yeah, good stuff.
Excellent.